Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ken's Travels. Today, I have a very special guest with me. This is Christopher Francis. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Kenneth and I have worked together since, we worked together when? 2015, year and a half?
Been about 4.5 years altogether, but not always together directly.
We got to know each other well and become friends outside of work, and he invited me to come on his trip with him, and I said yes.
Yeah, so basically before that, I had always been going to places like in different states, like Cleveland, Cincinnati, Atlanta, Miami, different places, but I had never actually went out of the country before. And Chris was one of the people who, at my job, actually had been out of the country before. So, that's always been something that's been pretty inspiring to me. Him and another coworker named Sammy, and then we had another coworker named Chance. Like, they were just traveling all the time, domestically and internationally, and it's something that I always wanted to do. So last year sometime, I was actually about to take a trip out to LA, and at the last minute, I just got some courage out of somewhere, and I said, I'm going to go overseas. So Chris and Sammy basically was instrumental in me taking my trip. He gave me a bunch of advice: go here, go there, do this, do that. It seemed like they both were more excited than I was about going on my first trip. Truth be told, I think they both were super excited that they were going to ship let me take that back. They were going to send their first black guy overseas. So, like, I shouldn't have said shit. That probably wasn't the right choice of words.
To me, it was like having a child going away to college for the first time and hoping they did well.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So I went on my first trip, then I went on a second trip, and this time I asked him to come. At first he said no because I was going to go to some Asian places. Not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. But anyway, so at first he said he wasn't going to go. Then I changed my mind about where I was going to go. And then he hit me up one day, what was it, about midnight, 1 in the morning?
Something. I worked nights, so it probably was.
Yeah, he just hit me up out of nowhere and said, "Hey, Ken, is that offer still on the table?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he went online that very same night, asked me what airlines I was catching, the flight times, and he bought the tickets that same night. So I was like, wow, this dude is really serious, because most of the people that I talk to, they play around and they're like, oh, I'm going to go, or something came up, or I don't have my money. But I mean, for somebody to say that they're going to come with you and then pay for everything that same night, I was just like, wow. And then I knew he went places before, so I knew that this was just going to be a great idea. With that said, Chris, let the audience know all the places that you've been to so far.
Well, my first trip abroad was in 1997 to Sydney, Australia. I was fortunate enough to have made a friend who lives in Sydney. Well, I met her in LA, and then she invited me to come visit her. So I went ahead and got the ticket about 2 years after she and I met, because we established a friendship, back then through writing letters, pen pals, and we hit it off so great, she invited me to visit. So I had a free accommodation, which made it very easy to do my first international trip. So I went and had a blast, and that young lady, I obviously was an okay guess, because we're still friends all these years later. So.
And where else have you been to?
The next time, I didn't go until 2015, shortly after we met. I went to England for just a long weekend, because I had got an insurance settlement, which allowed me just enough money to have a long weekend in England, 3 nights in London and 1 in Paris. And I said, let me just do that and do something crazy. I would never recommend going for a long weekend again, because just by the time you acclimate to the time difference, it's like time to come home. But I don't regret it, because I had a great time. So that was 3 days in London, 1 in Paris, and that was 2015. Then 2017, what year was last year? 2018, one of my closest friends was adopting a little girl from India, and she wanted to quote someone else, an international adoption wingman. So she took me with her to India, and I spent 3 weeks there in 3 very distinct different parts of India. And that was incredible. Wait, I'm leaving something out. Oh, late 2017, I went again back to the south of France, which is very different than Paris, for 3 nights, and then London for 4 nights. So how many times? That's 4 times total.
Okay. That's kind of funny, like, the same places I went the very first time was London and Paris too. And that first time, I used my income tax return to go. So I can completely understand with the insurance thing.
Yeah, I mean, we both are capable of saving money, but when you get a 1 lump sum and it's not going to make the difference between you being homeless or without your car,
Exactly.
why not spend it on something fun that's a once in a lifetime opportunity?
All right, I know some people will say sometimes like, oh, they think you're being reckless or you're being careless, and it's just like you can't be uptight your whole entire life and have like life-affirming experiences if you're just so worried about having all the T's crossed and all the I's dotted every single time. You got to live a little bit and have fun.
And precisely, and I kept saying I would wait to travel internationally till I had, a special someone to go with, or till
Exactly.
I had a ton of money in the bank and it wasn't such a whatever. And I'm like, if I keep waiting for this, it might never happen. I mean,
Exactly.
so I just said, you know what, and I'll go by myself, because the people that wanted to go with me did not have the money or vacation time to travel. And the people that had the money or the vacation time were using it for something else that was more crucial to them than going on a European jaunt with me.
Excuse me for that little technicality there. Moving right along, so out of all the places that you've been to so far, what would you say is your favorite and why?
I expected it to be London because I've always liked British things, but it was actually the south of France. It's on the Mediterranean. The view is stunning. It's like the most beautiful part of California, but amped up a little bit. So like Malibu, Pacific Coast Highway, but even more beautiful. And the people were lovely. Architecture, because it has a combo of French influence and Italian influence, so it kind of looks Mediterranean-y, yet has that French flavor due to being a French country. The food was incredible and interesting, and it was just a different world, but a nice, cozy, cute, accessible, different world.
All right, so out of all the places that you've been to, what is the absolute worst thing that's ever happened to you before?
Other than like an airport tie-up where my flight was delayed and I had to wait 6 hours in the airport with nothing to do, I'm going to say in India, perhaps, just being hassled and hustled for money. I mean, here in America, of course, we can walk out of a store and have a homeless person ask us for money. But here it's really, they send their children to try to hit you up for money, and they just are too aggressive. I mean, this little girl followed it. I don't flip out on people, but God forgive me, I had to flip out on a little girl that just wouldn't stop following me on the beach and then started touching me to get money. So finally I just screamed, get lost or something. God forgive me, but she got handsy. And that was an annoyance. It wasn't a danger. It wasn't, didn't ruin my trip. But, luckily that's the worst thing. Oh, wait a minute, I did get lost in the jungle. No, my friend and I took a nature hike because we don't speak Hindi, and actually in this part of India it was called Kannada, like Canada but with a K and two N's. And she thought, my hostess that I was with thought we were going to a butterfly. I don't think I even told you this. Going to a butterfly reserve to look at beautiful, rare Indian butterflies. And we got there and kind of talked to the guys and gave them some money to give us a tour. And it was literally a 5-mile hike. And I'm not the most athletic person in the world, but my friend that I was with really isn't. And neither of us had the right shoes on. I mean, we looked good, but it was, we had blisters, and it was definitely an experience. But we saw monkeys, which was awesome. And, even then, it's still something to laugh at now.
Yeah, it's always easier to laugh, like, unless it's over with and you're away from it. But at the time, it's like the worst thing in the world. I know when I had went to Paris and I was on my way back to Pittsburgh, and one of my friends was like, just catch an Uber. And I was like, no, I'm going to catch the train. So I caught the train, and I got to the one station, and I got on the train, got on the wrong train, took me to the wrong place. Got it back to the right place. Then I asked this other man for directions. He gave me wrong directions, so I got on another wrong train. Then I got on the right train, but there was like a fork in the road. So the train went to the right. The one I was supposed to get on was supposed to go to the left. So then I had to go back again. And then when I got to the same place I was supposed to be at, then I was standing on the wrong platform. So then I missed the train too. And there was like less than an hour left to get to the airport. So I finally sucked it up and got an Uber. And I'm flying down through the airport and everything. And I think I got onto the plane with like 6 minutes to spare or something like that. It was like very, very stressful. It felt like Amazing Race or something.
Yeah, and I thought me getting on an express instead of a local in the Bronx and ending up in the wrong borough was bad. It's like the same thing. Sometimes it takes a fork, and you don't know what's going to take the fork, and you end up. So that is why, and I think we both know this, you always allow extra time.
And the thing is, I did. I actually left a little bit earlier, and thank God I did, because if not, I would have, And if you got to pay for a plane ticket, that same day or spur of the moment, I mean, there's no telling how much that plane ticket's going to
I
be.
mean, you know, sometimes they accommodate you if you miss it and you have a blonde moment or a traffic tie-up or whatever. Sometimes they will do that, but they ain't got to for sure.
I don't have any hair, so I technically couldn't have a blind moment. Okay.
Well, mine, when I did have it.
All right, so what would you say is the best thing that happened to you overseas?
I'll tell you what, the people that I met. I mean, the scenery was great, the food was great, but, you know, I made one friend at a concert in London who, you know, thanks to us just bonding, I now have a free place to stay in one of the most chic parts of Los Angeles whenever I go there. And even though, you know, I can take or leave people when they're being difficult or miserable, at the same time, I guess I hate to admit it, I am a people person, so some of the people I met, or like when I was in London, for example, at the airport, in line for the Delta check-in, this little old British lady who now lives in Minneapolis was there. She's like, "Oh, how did you live London, love?" Yeah, and she asked me if I had any tea when I was there, because, you know, the British love their tea. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And she's like, "Oh, that's most dreadful. I must take you for tea before you get on your flight."
I remember you telling me.
Yes, and so this lovely old lady named Sheila took me for tea, and then it got even better because out of her handbag she pulled some kind of pastry with puffy layers of bread and ham, and you know I love my pork products and my bread products. So I mean, being taken to tea by a real British person and a pork product to boot. I mean, and I always, you know, we hugged and I will always remember each other. So it sounds corny, but it's the people.
Okay. You always seem to be able to get like the hookup. You always have friends or people that you meet that takes you out to places or lets you travel with them or do this or do that. I mean, I guess it's because you're just so friendly and personable, and everybody's just like, I'm not taking him anywhere when it comes to me.
But you know, that's not entirely true. I mean, I'm friendly and personable if it's real. I think if I tried to like make friendships with people for that purpose or try to, I don't know, be a travel gold digger, you know, as it were.
Yeah.
No, but it's just real. Sometimes you meet a really cool person, and sometimes you have a bond or whatever. So, and that's one of the good things about traveling alone. There are some bad things, but one of the good things is it opens you up to meeting people more. Because if you're with somebody, you know, you may not get talked to as much, or
Sure.
they might think that's your significant other or
Sure.
whatever, so they don't want to interrupt.
Or they might think you're their pimp.
Wait, did that happen? Oh, wait, that didn't happen to me. Is that what you're talking about? They did. That was in Cleveland. That wasn't even. But yeah. So just be yourself is what I say. And if yourself is the kind of person that draws people to you to make friendships, then it'll happen.
See, guys, that was a great Dr. Phil bonding moment. He said, "Be yourself, and if you be yourself, people will like you." Anyway, so basically, before we go any further, I just want to say that it is extremely hot in here, and I'm sweating and burning up to death. So if you see me keep wiping my face, I really can't help it right now because there's like no AC in here right now. So just bear with us. With that said, next up, talk to me a little bit about India, like with some of the kids. You took a bunch of pictures with a bunch of kids, and you also wrote those crazy-ass little tuk-tuk things.
Okay, first of all, a tuk-tuk is the color scheme of a John Deere tractor, but not much bigger, because that green and yellow, but not much bigger than, smaller than a golf cart. And it's got like one wheel in front, it's motorized, but it's got like one wheel in front, two in the back. And India is so tight and compacted. I mean, it makes New York City look like a pasture. It is very tight, and there's so less traffic rules and less enforcement. So these little devices that go in between all the cars, and I just took one from the Mumbai airport to our hotel, and it was, you know what, I've been with American drivers in their own cars that were scarier because that car was bigger and the cars they were going to hit were bigger, and I really didn't feel unsafe, but yet it was definitely an experience of a lifetime that I will never forget. And I was scared for the other people on the road for whatever reason that he was going to hit. Not me, but you know what? That's their life. They know exactly how to go and where to go without knocking into anybody. So.
And are they expensive or?
No, they're cheap. I mean, taking Uber in India of all places is really cheap because of the exchange rate. But those aren't expensive either. But you just have to. That's a place where you have to negotiate with the driver and clearly say how much you're paying before, because they do like to add on little fees or pretend you didn't understand them, or, you know, not all. I'm not saying all Indians are like that, but that is a cultural thing where suddenly the price changes or what have you, and you know that can happen anywhere. So You just want to make gosh darn sure you establish the actual retail price of the whole thing before you do it.
All right, and can you go into a little bit of detail about, you spent a lot of time with a lot of kids in India too, like you took a bunch of pictures with them, like can you go into detail a little bit about that?
Yeah, and anyone who knows me would find that surprising that I come back with pictures of me with kids because, I shouldn't say I can barely tolerate them, but, it's nice when you can give them back when they're misbehaving. But because my friend was going to adopt a little girl from an orphanage, there were lots of little kids there. And my friend had warned me, she's like, when they see a male come in, because they don't have male there, all the caretakers are women, they're just going to think it's like, Superman or whatever. And I'm like, okay, sure. And yeah, I was swarmed, and it was really sad and heartwarming and touching because they just wanted hugs and to be held. And, it just shows you how lucky we have it over here.
Yeah.
And, plus on that, they were fun. And they just wanted to see pictures of where I lived, and they just wanted to touch my skin to see what it felt like. Because, seriously, in the south of India, they all have cell phones. Even the poorest of the poor has a cell phone. But, for many, I was the first white person they'd ever seen in person. And it was not anything to them.
That's what you were getting at.
Them, I was exotic, and they just wanted to see what my skin felt like. And it was really sweet and really nice, natural curiosity. And, and they weren't the only ones, the adults, and there were adults like that too. So, but no, the kids that weren't hitting me up for money and weren't following me around and touching me trying to get money were adorable and sweet. And I would never change that, as corny as it sounds, again, I would never change that experience for anything.
All right, what would you say that you enjoy the most about traveling?
Just stepping off that plane and feeling whatever the air is, even if it's the humid air of India, where you're sweating more than we are now, or the beautiful coastal winds of the Mediterranean, it's just, you're somewhere different, and you're seeing something you just normally don't see. I mean, it's just, it sounds, I don't know, corny or pretentious or what have you, but you just feel so, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not even, to use the word, travel, and just like you're seeing things.
It's travel, yeah.
And it's just awesome.
I know, like, on my very first trip, when I was on a plane, we were getting to Gatwick Airport in London, and as I'm seeing, like, the HSBC logos, and then I'm seeing the London Gatwick and everything, and I'm like, fuck, like, I really did this. I'm, like, really here, and the whole time I'm like, God, please do not let this plane crash and let me die. Like, I have to do this, I have to experience this, So, like, to actually get there and land, and then you're walking around the airport, and you see the picture of Queen Mom, and just that whole experience. And then especially, like you said, like, being by yourself and doing it alone, like, you're so proud of yourself. Like, you did this. Like, nobody can ever take that away from you. Like, sometimes in our life, you could work at certain jobs, or you could be around certain people, and they might think that you're dumb or stupid. And it's like, to go overseas by yourself and figure it all out and plan all that stuff in advance, and like, once you do that and accomplish it, like, it's a great feeling. You're just like, no, I'm not dumb. Like, I'm a pretty smart dude, and I figured this out. Where most people are, like, scared to death to even attempt to do something like that.
Right. I mean, there's people who wouldn't go to, like, we're in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or even New York or somewhere by themselves because they're afraid. Mm-hmm. So obviously you have to have a certain something in you to be able to even think about going out on your own in the first place. Mm-hmm. And you can't give somebody that internal whatever they have to do that, but it's not that if that person researches and learns way in advance before you go, you'll figure it out.
And that's the most important part is research. People don't understand that enough. Like, don't just hop on a plane or train and just go somewhere and pop up there and then try to figure out, like, what you're going to do once you get there. That's probably the absolute worst thing that you could do.
And you are even better at this than me, but one thing I did, for instance, I knew I wanted to go to this bar, this restaurant, and this tourist site in England. So you simply look up and see where they are in relevance to each other, because you aren't going to go to the one that's over here, then the one that's over here, then you're going to go here and here, those two places, then go to that. Like, I mean, that sounds simple, like, duh, who would think of that? But sometimes if you just go over there and just throw yourself in, you don't think about that and you waste time.
All right, and what would you say is, about traveling, what would you say that you enjoy the least about it?
I mean, jet lag, I guess. I mean that's kind of that's a lame answer. That's common.
Sure.
Bathroom. overseas bathrooms are harder to find. You know, wow, I don't know what to say. Just, I'm trying to think of something bad about it.
What about the going overseas? I know using the bathrooms. I was really shocked that you have to pay to use the bathroom. Like that really pissed me off because sometimes you have to pee so bad and you don't have change or you can't find like a change machine and you're sitting there running around trying to ask somebody for money and you're just like, really, I gotta pay to pee?
And yeah, in India you did have to do that. That's the only place I ever saw it. And for the privilege of peeing in a dirty ass squat toilet, no less. So not sexy. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's the only thing. There are certain things you want, and this is just us being Americans, certain things you want that they don't have there. But you know what, get used to it. Eat something else or drink something else or use a different hair product if you have hair or a different whatever, you know, you'll live.
Okay. All right, so, I mean, even though we record work and all, like, we never had hung out or done anything before and all, like, what made you decide that you would hit me up that day and say that you decided that you were going to travel with me, of all people?
Well, I thought long and hard about accepting your offer because you're going to be somewhere away from home with somebody else. I mean, I thought long and hard before accepting that offer from someone I've known a lot longer than you because you're kind of stuck with that person if you're sharing accommodations and everything. So I thought, gee, I've worked with this guy for, 1.5 years side by side, more years after that not side by side. And we'd hung out a few times outside work for a couple hours here and there. And I was like, you know what, based on what I know of him, it's going to be a blast because we always have fun and laugh. And we're both independent enough that if one of us wants to do something the other doesn't do, neither one of us is going to be a baby and feel abandoned or anything like that. And I think I did give you the disclaimer that if I want to sleep all day one day, you might be alone on some night. But you've already gone alone, so what do you care, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I was thinking about that too as well. Because like I said, all the other times I went by myself and going with somebody else, even though like our accommodations have like 2 rooms or 2 different beds and things like that. Like I'm just gonna tell you like right now, like if I find me a hookup while we're out of town, you have to go.
I mean you know what? I'm sure there's some snazzy cocktail lounge I can go to while you spend your 15 minutes doing what you gotta do.
It's going to be longer than 15 minutes.
Sorry, I'm just going by what I heard.